Is it love, or is your brain just craving a hit of the most dangerous drug on earth? At 40, your obsession isn't about their soul, it's about the testosterone-fueled aggression and oxytocin addiction that makes rejection feel like physical withdrawal. Why is a person who hasn't touched you in a year still living rent-free in your bed? You're trapped in a sexual ghosting loop where your brain romanticizes a 10% fantasy to avoid the cold 90% reality. Today, we're stripping down the science of why you're chasing a ghost, decoding the chemical surge that makes a no feel like a more, and how to finally break the cycle of self-sabotage to reclaim your inherent worth. We're breaking down the lethal cocktail of cortisol and dopamine that's aging you faster than time itself. If they haven't chosen you by now, the closure you're waiting for is a lie you're telling yourself to avoid coming home to your own worth. Stop chasing a 10% fantasy. It's time to reclaim your 90% reality. Good evening, pull up a chair, grab a coffee, and let's have a real conversation, man to man, adult to adult. We are sitting here in a country that values stoicism, hard work, and suburban stability, yet so many of us, professionals, parents, leaders in our communities, are secretly crumbling behind closed doors because of a ghost. I'm speaking to those of you in that 40 to 65 bracket, the prime of life as they call it, who find yourselves staring at a smartphone screen at 2 a.m., wondering why someone who walked away months or even a year ago still occupies 90% of your mental real estate. You ask yourself, why does this happen? Why is it so hard to let go of someone who already let go of you? Let's be blunt, obsession is often just grief in disguise, but at our age, it becomes something far more insidious, a form of biological and psychological self-harm. You are grieving the person, yes, but you are also grieving the version of yourself that was deeply, deeply open and got hurt. At this stage of life, we don't have another 30 years to waste on a what if. If you've been stuck in this loop for a year, it is time to understand the hidden corners of your mind and heart, not just to heal, but to stop the slow erosion of your dignity. The reality we must face is that you have tied your inherent worth to their attention. Perhaps their validation made you feel special in a way no one else in your long life ever could. When that attention stopped, it didn't just hurt, it shattered the structural integrity of your self-esteem. You began to internalize their silence as a verdict on your value. If they aren't calling, you assume you aren't enough. So you find yourself chasing their ghost, hoping it'll make you feel whole again. But as we research the mechanics of the human heart, the truth remains, your worth was never meant to be measured by someone else's presence or absence. Letting go of this attachment isn't about forgetting them, it's about remembering yourself. It's about reclaiming your value and realizing that at 50 or 60, you are already enough. No matter what someone chooses to withhold, your worth is inherent. You're not just attached to the person, you're attached to the emotional experience you had with them. Maybe they showed up during a vulnerable transition, a divorce, a career shift, or the empty nest syndrome, and gave you a kind of comfort that felt rare. They made you feel safe, seen, and emotionally alive. But staying emotionally tied to someone who is no longer present keeps you stuck in a past that is rapidly decaying. Healing begins when you learn to give yourself the emotional nourishment you once looked for in them. Now, let's get into the hard science, because this is where most of you try to argue with me. You think you're in love, but your brain is actually undergoing a chemical hijacking that is specifically devastating for the mature Canadian demographic. We are wired for connection because it's crucial for survival, but when the brain goes into overdrive, it's due to excess chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. First, let's talk about dopamine, the hormone of the reward system. When you first met this person, your brain released a surge of dopamine that made you feel euphoric, alive, and rejuvenated. Suddenly, everything about them, their smile, their voice, a simple text, triggered a release. As time goes on, that initial high turns into a serious craving. This is reward learning, and at age 45 or 55, your dopamine receptors are not as resilient as they were at 20. You become addicted to the hit of their attention. If you don't hear from them for a minute, anxiety creeps in. You wonder if they're ghosting you. The need for their attention becomes an addiction, literal and measurable. This is why you feel so lost without them. You are quite literally going through withdrawal. Then comes oxytocin, the love hormone that deepens emotional bonds. When you shared physical closeness or just binge-watched a show together on a cold Canadian winter night, your oxytocin levels rose, flooding you with feelings of warmth and safety. But with high levels of oxytocin, the fear of separation grows exponentially. This bond becomes a shackle. You start feeling anxious when you're apart, wondering what they're doing or if they're with someone else. This leads to the clingy behaviors we all despise in ourselves, the double texting, the constant checking of last seen status. The thought of separation feels unbearable because you have become dependent on them for your chemical stability. And for the men listening, don't think you're exempt. Testosterone levels rise in these intense encounters linked to desire but also aggression and possessiveness. It stirs up competitive feelings, making you want to guard them and keep others away. It's a primal, territorial drive that can lead to controlling behaviors that you, as a mature adult, should have outgrown. This emotional roller coaster increases the release of cortisol, the stress hormone. When love turns obsessive, cortisol spikes, leading to chronic stress. At our age, we cannot afford chronic cortisol spikes. It leads to sleepless nights, racing thoughts, tension headaches, and nausea. You end up in a never-ending loop of fearing rejection. Eventually, these insecurities overshadow whatever love was there to begin with. And the final blow, serotonin. When love becomes an obsession, your serotonin levels drop significantly, mimicking the brain chemistry of someone with obsessive-compulsive disorder. This is why you are locked in a pattern of overanalyzing every interaction. Like, are they mad? Was that post about me? Did they use that song because they miss me? Your brain is stuck in a loop of intrusive, repetitive thoughts. Instead of feeling warm and cozy, this love has become a grueling, exhausting job that you aren't even getting paid for. You see, we often fall in love with a fantasy, not the person. Research shows that in these obsessive states, we only truly know about 10% of who the person is. We take that 10%, the best parts, the highlights, and we use our imagination to fill in the other 90%. You aren't obsessed with a human being, you are obsessed with a script you wrote where they play the lead role. Obsession thrives when you're chasing a version of someone that never really existed. It grows when your own sense of self-worth is out of reach. That's why letting go is about coming home to you. You're all over their social media, trying to decode the meaning behind every post, hoping for a sign that confirms they still care. But let's be real connection doesn't need decoding. It is clear, consistent, and mutual. If you have to be a private investigator to figure out if someone likes you, they don't. The moment you stop searching for signs is the moment you begin to create space for peace. Many of you are still holding out for closure. You replay that last conversation over and over, hoping for something that would make it all make sense. Maybe they ghosted you and now you're stuck in limbo. Here is the hard truth: the closure you're waiting for may never come. And even if it did, it wouldn't heal you. Closure isn't a gift someone else gives you, it's a boundary you set for yourself. You give yourself closure when you decide that your healing is more important than an explanation. The longer you wait for them to close the door, the longer you stay trapped in the hallway. You've romanticized the good and conveniently forgotten the hard parts, the anxiety, the silence, the one-sidedness. I want you to make that 2-column list, fantasy versus reality. Not to shame yourself, but to remind your heart of the full truth. Healing begins with honesty, especially the kind of honesty that hurts. You compare everyone new to them, don't you? You tell yourself no one else has their charm or their voice. But what if what you're holding on to wasn't them, but the idea of them? Familiarity doesn't always mean right. Sometimes it just means unhealed. If you're stuck, know that you aren't weak. You just loved deeply, but real love, the kind that heals, begins with you. You've carried this weight for so long. At 40, 50, or 60, you deserve peace. You deserve a love that is certain and safe. I think about the story of Amy, who wrote about her struggle grieving a boyfriend she loved. He was fun and charming, but he was disrespectful. She chose to leave. It wasn't easy, and she misses him every day, but she reminds herself why she left. She deserves more than charm. She deserves respect. When the urge to call hits, she journals, she walks, she rides the wave, she doesn't go back. That is the discipline of the mature heart. So, as we wrap up this first part of our analysis, ask yourself, is this person worth the biological toll they are taking on you? Is your 90% fantasy worth sacrificing your actual lived reality? We are wired for connection, but we are also wired for survival. It's time to stop the self-sabotage and start the process of coming home. We'll dive deeper into the how in the next part, but for now, I want you to sit with the chemistry. I want you to realize that you are being hijacked, and the first step to freedom is recognizing the captor. Do you feel like you're stuck in this cycle? Look at the people around you, your friends, your hobbies, and ask yourself when you last gave them the same energy you give to a ghost. You aren't alone in this, but you are the only one who can decide to walk through the new door. Are you ready to stop being a spectator in your own life? Let's find out. Now that we have stripped away the romantic veneer and looked at the cold, hard chemistry of your obsession, we need to talk about the architecture of your recovery. In the second half of our study, I want to move from the why to the how, but I'm not going to give you superficial platitudes. At our age, between 40 and 65, we don't need a Band-Aid. We need a total recalibration of our internal GPS. You've spent months, perhaps that entire year we discussed, looking outward, waiting for a signal from a lighthouse that has been dark for a long time. It is time to turn that searchlight inward. If we are to treat this as a serious psychological inquiry, we must address the concept of radical self-validation and the dismantling of the attachment trap that has kept you in this mental prison. The first thing you must understand about your 40 to 65-year-old brain is that it is a master of narrative. We have lived long enough to tell ourselves very convincing lies. One of those lies is that this person was my last chance at passion. This is a common existential fear in the Canadian midlife experience. We see the winters getting longer, our children growing up, our careers peaking, and we panic. We latch onto a person not because they are perfect, but because they represent a surge of aliveness we fear we will never feel again. This is where the 10% versus 90% discrepancy becomes lethal. You are not obsessed with a human being who has flaws, bills, and bad moods. You are obsessed with a chemical souvenir of your own youth. To break this, you must engage in what I call cognitive sovereignty. You have to stop being a tenant in your own mind and start being the landlord. Let's look at the attachment styles mentioned in our research. Many of us who struggle with this 12-month obsession cycle carry what psychologists call an ambivalent insecure attachment. This often traces back to our childhood, perhaps a parent whose care was inconsistent. You learned early on that love was something you had to perform for, something that could be withdrawn at any moment. Now, at 50, you are playing out that same childhood drama with a different actor. When they withdraw, your inner child doesn't just feel sad, it feels annihilated. This is why you look for signs in their social media or decode their playlists. You are seeking reassurance that you still exist in their world so that you can feel you exist in your own. But look at the data. Real connection is consistent, it is mutual. If you are the only one decoding, you are the only one in the relationship. Acknowledge that your obsession is actually a sophisticated defense mechanism designed to keep you from facing the void within yourself. Now let's discuss the emotional detox in a practical, educational sense. Just as you would cleanse your body after a period of indulgence, you must cleanse your cognitive pathways. This requires radical self-love, which is a term often misused. In the context of a 60-year-old man or woman, radical self-love means having the discipline to stop checking their Instagram. It means blocking, not out of anger, but out of a desperate, holy necessity for peace. You are currently reinforcing a neural pathway every time you look at their photo. You are literally deepening the rut in your brain. To heal, you must starve the circuit. When the urge hits to call them or check on them, as Amy described in her story, you must have a substitution protocol. Amy took a walk, she journaled, she stepped outside for fresh air. She didn't just try to stop, she replaced the destructive action with a constructive one. For us in Canada, maybe it's a walk through the pines, a drive by the lake, or reconnecting with a friend we've neglected while we were busy worshipping a ghost. Furthermore, we must address the myth of the soulmate. In our age group, we grew up on stories of the one. But from a research perspective, this is a dangerous psychological construct. It suggests that your wholeness is dependent on a specific external variable. When that variable, the person, is removed, you feel mathematically incomplete. I want to propose a different model, the whole self. You are a complete ecosystem. The person you are obsessed with was a guest in that ecosystem, not the sun around which it orbits. When you realize that your worth is inherent and non-negotiable, the obsession loses its power. It's like realizing a ghost is just a curtain blowing in the wind. You stop being afraid and you start closing the window. As we move toward a conclusion of this research, I want to talk about the investment fallacy. At 55, you might feel like you've invested too much time to walk away. I spent 5 years with them, or I've waited a year for them to come back. This is a sunk cost bias. The time you've spent is gone. The only question that matters is how much more of your remaining life are you willing to set on fire? You deserve a love that is safe, certain, and grounded in the present, not a love that feels like a high-stakes gambling addiction. You deserve to be seen, not just tolerated or decoded. Let's be real, this journey isn't a straight line. You will have days where the cortisol wins and you feel that pit in your stomach again. But on those days, I want you to remember that your brain is just trying to protect you in a clumsy, outdated way. Thank your brain for trying to keep you connected, then firmly tell it that you are safe now. You don't need that person to survive the winter. You are the master of your own warmth. You have survived every hard day of your 40, 50, or 60 years so far. You are a survivor of life's complexity. Don't let a ghost be the thing that finally breaks your spirit. In this educational series, our goal is to help you feel less alone. We are a community of people who have felt this intensity and chosen to walk toward the light anyway. Healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about outgrowing it. It's about becoming so large, so full of your own life, hobbies, friendships, and purpose that the memory of that person occupies only a tiny, dusty corner of your heart instead of the whole room. You are coming home to yourself, and that is the most beautiful homecoming there is. I want to hear from you now because your experience is part of this collective research. We learn from each other's scars. Please take a moment to reflect on these 3 questions and share your thoughts in the comments. 1. Looking back at that 10% versus 90% ratio, what specific fantasy trait were you projecting onto them that they never actually proved they possessed in reality? 2. How has your body, not just your mind, responded to this year of obsession, sleep, tension, health, and are you ready to choose physical peace over mental chaos? 3. If you were to give your inner child the validation you've been seeking from your ex, what is the first thing you would say to yourself tonight? If this analysis challenged you or gave you a new lens to see your situation, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us reach more people who are trapped in these loops, and it builds our community of healing. We are in this together, and your support allows us to keep digging into the deep psychology that matters. As you close this video and go about your evening, I wish you more than just moving on. I wish you a profound rediscovery of your own light. May you find the strength to close the doors that no longer lead anywhere. May God bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you and give you peace in your heart and stillness in your mind. You are loved, you are valued, and you are, above all things, enough. Take care of yourselves, Canada. We'll talk again soon.